Wow. And like these are the conversations that I think are important for parents to hear, because that's something that maybe probably your dad, like did not even, was not even on his mind at that particular time in his defense. And you also bring the interesting point that your dad was widowed. As a child, did it occur to you that you are different from the other kids, and that maybe even your family is different from the other families, like your neighbors and other places that you are interacting with people? At what point in your life did you start noticing this? Maybe how old were you?
As soon as I went into school, so pre-K.
Okay.
When you're in pre-K, before pre-K, my parents were able to dictate what my social environment was. Once I got into pre-K, it was whoever had, certain addresses, and they fed into the particular school that I went to. And that's when we were able to encounter differences. It also got more pronounced as far as my, being born somewhere else when it came to things like getting a driver's license, not even a passport, getting a driver's license. There's an experience there because the type of documents that you have to provide if you're a U.S. citizen are different than if you are not. And there is an assumption with your peers. We've grown up to each other with each other. We've gone through school since pre-K, that my experience is going to be the same as theirs. And it was not. There was a little bit extra that I had to do in order to get something as simple as a driver's license. And I know that even now with the ID system that they have put in place, it's a little bit more complicated than when I was getting my driver's license. So those are two significant moments that I can recall that I realized, I'm not exactly the same. We're in the same space. But in my house, we speak different languages. In my house, we eat different foods. And I have a different pathway in order to get basic rights that my peers have.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. What about your parents? Because it's when you realize that you're different. But at what point did you also start noticing that your parents are different from maybe other parents that you would see in school or in other places where you interacted with parents of your friends?
As soon as I was able to play outside, there were some parents who were like, "Oh yeah, you can go to so-and-so's house," or there was those of us who live in, I would say ethnic, but black neighborhoods. There was a woman who lived down the street who would sell ice cups or would sell candy from her house. And she just was like the community grandma. There was a hesitance with my family to go there and interact with that person. Whereas the other kids in the street, it was just like, oh, that's the community grandma. We always, give her 25 cents. It was not even expensive. It was an opportunity for her to be a grandma of the community. And my parents were a bit more hesitant. They warmed up to it. She lived close enough so that my parents could observe, and we had rules. I couldn't go inside the house and things like that. But there was always a level of fear that as a child I wasn't able to identify what it was, but I did know that there was some sort of hesitance with the proximity with people who were not like me, which is unfortunate because there were not a lot of people like me. So it's a very isolating experience.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. Now, before I bring in the rest of the panel to this conversation, as we try to get to the meat and bones,
yes.
Now as an adult, when did you start feeling like now your parents' generation, or maybe the older generation, or maybe the newer generation of Kenyans that had come to the US, at what point did you start noticing a disconnection? Because, of course, when you're young, you're with your family and with your family's friends most of the time. But at what point now as an adult, or maybe at what point did you start noticing that there's a clear disconnection between these two demographics?
I think comparison is a big factor. I have the opportunity to compare my experiences with the peers that I went to high school with. And I have the opportunity to compare with, people in my neighborhood, those that I interacted with, maybe those that I worked with. I specifically remember an interaction I had with a woman when I was going to prom. I went to many proms, so I can't specifically tell you which one it was. But let's say it was my sophomore, junior. I know it wasn't my senior year. So let's say it was my sophomore, junior year, and I was going either to junior or senior prom. And I was, meeting up at the location. Parents are there. And, my father's widowed. He's working. He's taking care of 4 children. He was not a participant. And I didn't have, any aunties there or anything like that. So I'm there by myself. I got dropped off at this location. And everyone had their friends, their support. They're taking pictures. I mean, this is a version of it that's very different from the current Instagram world. Mm-hmm. Where you have a whole production. So this is before the production was there, but I could very clearly see this prom thing is a very big deal for them. And, they had sisters and aunties and moms who were involved in this process, whereas I did it by myself. And my father was a widow. And there was no one to hype me up or take me shopping for a prom dress and all of these. I did all of that stuff myself. And one of the things that was I remember there was a thing that was very, that really stood out to me was I was at someone's house at one of these events, and we're getting ready before the limo comes, and there was an issue with the cut of my dress and the bra that I was wearing. And this lady was just like, no one in your house told you that there's an issue going on here.
Oh, wow.
So were you showing too much?
No. It's just so there are different bras that you wear for different dresses.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So it wasn't even necessarily that I didn't do anything inappropriate. I didn't have that audacity. But it was more so just someone who would have seen, the way I might look at my child and be like, oh, maybe, you need to wipe your face or you need to do this. There was clearly not that for me. So she looked at me and she was like, nobody saw you leaving the house and saying that you needed to pin your bra to the strap of your dress. And I had no answer I said nothing. I just looked at her.
But that must have been very
How
hurtful.
old were you?
I'm gonna be 15 or 14 or 15 years old when this happened. My mom died when I was just before I turned 14 years old. So there was no my father. He did his job. He dropped me off at the place at the time that I told him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you still gotta go deal with the other 3 kids.
And I think, thank God for Grace, she didn't push the issue. And she was just like, I got pins. She got pins in the back of the room. And she pinned my bra to my dress in such a way that it wouldn't pop out in a way that was, just not cute. A very basic thing that me as a teenager didn't think about. I just got dressed and went out, did whatever. So these are moments where it was like, this is a very important thing to this culture. Prom is a very important thing. People are very involved when prom
Correct.
is a thing. It's even the family members dress up because it's an opportunity to dress up with your kid.
Take
pictures.
Yep.
Godmothers are
Sometimes
there and all that
the
stuff.
father drives the limo or drives the kids.
I personally did not have that experience. I went to a lot of proms, but I never had that full
experience where the parents are involved.
Yes,
and
everything that I had was borrowed from some other family.
Wow. And these are the conversations that I think are important for parents to hear, because that's something that maybe probably your dad, was not even on his mind at that particular time in his defense. And you also bring the interesting point that your dad was widowed. At that time you said your mom died when you were age 14. Last week we actually hosted Deborah Uko, the author of Rough Silk, who had a single dad, not because the mom died, but just because the mom walked out on the family, and was giving all these interesting experiences of having a single dad. So that in itself is a story on its own.
It sure is.
That maybe we can talk about in another episode. But I just wanted to point out that comparison. And Pablo here is again asking, would you change anything from back when you realized that you were different? Have your views changed on any particular area or issue? I know that's a very deep question, but you can just answer it.
It's also vague.
Yeah.
Because there's so many, I love specificity. There's so many things I could say about that. But what I will choose to answer is, that in the time where there was a little bit of struggle with identity as far as being African born or being different born or being different born but not being white presenting, right? Because if you're from the UK, that's different from if you are African. One thing that I know that has changed that I love is we have a very interesting pro-Black movement that's going on. There's natural hair is a thing. Crown Act is a thing. Afrobeats has taken over, whether they want to give us the accolades or not.
And Gengeton.
And Gengeton and Amapiano and all. There's so many things that are becoming a bit more mainstream that was not there when I was growing up. So being African before was, it was like I was the introduction to Africa. Mind you, I'm not from Africa as the entire continent. I represent a very small population within a country. But it was now put on me to now be a representative in the entire continent when I was growing up. Whereas now I can say, you know what, I'm African. I'm very proudly from Kenya. My people hail from a certain place and we speak these certain languages. And it's accepted, it's celebrated. And that's something that I have experienced as I've gotten older. As I've gotten older, me being me and having the identity that I've had, which has always been consistent, which I know that some people in this country do not have the opportunity to have, and I'm very grateful. I've been able to experience the part where it wasn't that great to the part where it's sought after even now.